Shalom. I am Rabbi Amy Scheinerman. Many of us are asking, why is this Passover different from all other Passovers? In some ways, it's not. Consider the first Passover in Egypt. Jews did not travel to visit one another and share the festival meal. There were no long and luxurious family gatherings around tables laden with sumptuous food, blessings recited, games and discussions and songs abounding. On the contrary, the Hebrews were hunkered down in their homes, terrified, their lintels painted with blood in hopes of avoiding the plague raging outside, claiming the lives of Egypt's firstborn. This year, we are keeping Passover amidst a plague that is not confined to the borders of Egypt. It is ravaging countries around the globe. Like our ancestors, we did not travel on Seder night. We hunkered down and we ate what we had on stock. Because if we're doing things right, we should be going out to shop as infrequently as possible. At the Passover Seder, we sing the Psalms of Hallel, the first half before dinner and the second half after dinner. The latter section includes this verse from Psalm 118. Min hametzar karati ya, anani v'merchav ya. In distress I called on Adonai. God answered me and brought me relief. Sometimes a translation that cleaves more closely to the Hebrew is especially helpful. This is one of those occasions. Min hametzar karati ya. From the narrow straits, I called to Adonai. Anani v'merchav ya. God answered me with God's broad expanse. The imagery of narrow confinement versus broad expanse is striking. The psalmist may have been experiencing physical, emotional, or spiritual straits, or perhaps some combination, or all three. The physical and social isolation we're all living with contributes to emotional and spiritual straits for many of us. The verse encourages us to reach emotionally and spiritually beyond our physical straits to God, however we conceive God, for a sense that there is more to our lives, more to who we are in this moment of time, more than the four walls that confine us. There's a lovely tune for this verse that I'd like to share with you. Min hametzar karati ya, anani v'merchav ya. Min hametzar karati ya, anani v'merchav ya. Min hametzar karati ya, anani v'merchav ya. Anani v'merchav ya, anani v'merchav ya, anani v'merchav ya, anani v'merchav ya. The highest Jewish priority is pikuach nefesh, saving a life. Our rabbis taught, one who saves a single life saves an entire world. In this regard, I want to tell you about Rabbi Israel ben Ze'ev Wolf Lipkin, better known as Rav Israel Salanter. He lived in Lithuania in the 19th century. Rabbi Salanter was a revered scholar of Talmud and the beloved founder of the Musar Jewish ethics movement that taught the importance of character and personal ethical behavior. The story I want to tell you concerns a pandemic, the cholera epidemic that swept much of the world from 1846 until 1860. Rabbi Salanter taught that it was a requirement, a Jewish requirement, to follow the wisdom and strictures of medical authorities to suppress the spread of cholera and save lives. This story concerns events that occurred on Yom Kippur, 1848. Rabbi Salanter feared that fasting would weaken people already susceptible to the disease and violate the premium Jewish tradition places on saving a life. Therefore, he posted proclamations in all the synagogues in Vilna instructing people to eat on Yom Kippur and do anything they could to preserve their energy. Here is part of David Frischman's dramatic telling of from the short story, 3 Who Ate. It was the afternoon of Yom Kippur. The rabbi stood bent over on the bima. Even now, my eyes can picture that incredible sight. As I stood there in the congregation of the synagogue, the rabbi stood on the bima, his dark eyes shining out from his pale face and white beard. The Musaf service was almost over, and the congregation stood silently waiting to hear something from this man of God. Suddenly, my ears heard a sound, but I could not understand exactly what it was. I heard the sounds, but my heart could not comprehend. With the permission of God and with the permission of the community, I hereby permit people to eat and to drink today. The beadle came forward and the rabbi whispered a few things into his ear. Then he spoke to the 2 dayanim who stood next to him. They nodded as if to approve of what he had said. And as this was happening, the beadle brought a cup of wine and some cake from the rabbi's home. If I am lucky to live for many more years, I will never forget that incredible day and that awesome sight. If I close my eyes for a moment, I can still see them, the 3 who ate. The 3 shepherds of Israel standing on the bima in the synagogue, eating in front of everyone on Yom Kippur. Rabbi Salanter placed the protection of lives above all else. He instructed people to eat to retain their strength, and he modeled the very behavior he advocated in public on the bima on Yom Kippur. We must do no less. As Torah itself declares, "You shall keep my statutes and my ordinances, which a person shall do, and live by them," which inspired the sage Shmuel to observe in the Talmud, "Live by them and not die by them." This isolation is tough, and we have a way to go. We are separated, secluded, lonely. Many are experiencing stress and fear quite unlike what we've felt before. Some of us have already lost loved ones and friends and are grieving. But please keep this in mind. Please remember, we are all potential vectors for transmitting COVID-19. So is everyone with whom we might have contact. Your isolation is saving lives, quite possibly yours, and also the lives of others. That makes practicing physical distancing a mitzvah, a religious obligation, a holy act. Let's all work together to alleviate some of the pain of isolation, mitigate as much of the stress and fear as we can, and console one another by connecting through phone calls and letters and video gatherings. Please, make a few calls each day to check in on family and friends. Let them know you're thinking of them. Don't wait for them to call you. Even better, video chat with people so you can see their face and they see yours. Nourishment for the soul. Are the phone and internet wholly satisfying? Quite possibly not. Probably not. But living this way for as long as it takes absolutely will save lives. And as our sages taught, one who saves one life saves an entire world. Please join me singing Min HaMetzar. Min HaMetzar karatia anani v'merchavya. Min HaMetzar karatia anani v'merchavya. Anani v'merchavya. Anani v'merchavya. Anani v'merchavya, Anani v'merchavya. I'd like to share a prayer with you for a time of isolation. Our God and God of all people, God of those who spent the first Passover night in Egypt isolated and frightened amidst the 10th plague. God of those who have spent Seder night since amidst other plagues. God of all those among us suffering isolation, fear, and grief amidst this current plague. We are experiencing loneliness, stress, fear, and grief. Strengthen us with the determination and conviction to comply fully with painful physical distancing, knowing it protects ourselves and others. Help us to cope with our isolation by reaching out by phone and internet, safely and lovingly to others, for they too are experiencing what we are experiencing. Grant us the insight to recognize that our efforts to protect us and others, and therefore our isolation, however painful, is a mitzvah, a holy act of pikuach nefesh that saves lives. Amen. I wish you well. Please stay safe. Shalom.